Is Justin Trudeau taking a walk in the sand? Is that his version of the walk in the snow? He's been out in Tofino for the last little while, and lots of people still speculating about his future. Hello, I'm Brian Lilley. This is the Full Comment Podcast, and today we're going to talk about the future of the Liberal Party, the future of Justin Trudeau, but more so in terms of who's going to replace him. Now, interestingly, while he was on vacation in Tofino and was ambushed on the beach by independent Calgary-based journalist Cian Bexty, he was asked if he was looking for a replacement for himself.
Are you concerned at all about your poll numbers?
No, I am not.
What causes you to not be concerned?
Because I spend a lot of time talking with Canadians. A lot of time, focusing on the things that we're doing to actually deliver for people.
So there you have it. Trudeau saying he's not going anywhere. Of course, that's what he has to say, but I believe him. Our guest this week on the Full Comment Podcast is not, and we have been debating the issue of whether Justin Trudeau is going to stay or go now, to reference The Clash, 4 months now. Warren Kinsella, Toronto Sun columnist, former Liberal strategist, and all-around good guy, joining me in studio here at Queen's Park. Hello, Warren.
Hello, sir.
So you saw the clips from that interview that Trudeau gave. First off, I actually think he looked good. He looked sympathetic. And I'm not someone overly sympathetic to the PM, but he did kind of look sympathetic in that interview because he's on the beach with his 10-year-old son splashing in the water and he gets ambushed. But he said very clearly, one, he's not going anywhere. And two, he's not worried about the polls.
Yeah, and it's like you said, you can't even give a hint, a scintilla of a hint, a sliver of a hint that you're going anywhere. You've got to say you're staying until the very last moment, and you pick up the phone and you call Katie Telford and maybe 2 other people and say, book the press theater. We're going to take a walk down Wellington. I'm leaving. And that's how it happens. And, look at Biden.
Unless you're Joe Biden, in which case Barack Obama threatened you with Section 25 of the U.S. Constitution, and you endorsed Kamala Harris on the way out the door to piss him off.
I think, but it was, the polls. Really was apparently, according to the American media, was the determining factor with Biden.
But
I think will be with Trudeau too.
He did it in the last second. Only a couple of people knew until he was ready to announce.
Right.
We've seen that with other leaders. So let's talk about if and when he does that, who replaces him. And our colleagues at National Post, Parliamentary Bureau, they put together an interesting little rundown of who it could be, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And you and I are just going to go through it and do what we do, and that's kibitz. So Mark Carney, the banker. I think Mark Carney is Pierre Poilievre's dream candidate replacement. Like, if Trudeau leaves, that actually messes up the Conservatives' plan for the next election. Campaign against Trudeau, not well liked. But if he does go, someone like Mark Carney is a lot more attractive to the Conservatives than some of the others because Goldman Sachs banker, central banker in Canada and England, there's a lot to go on there. This would be, he didn't come back for you 2.0, wouldn't it?
Firstly, hats off to our colleagues at the National Post. They have actually put more thought into this than the Liberal Party has. Because for the first time in its history, or certainly since I can remember, this is the first time the Liberal Party has not had an obvious successor in the wings, right? Somebody waiting. For Turner, it was Chrystia. For Chrystia, it was Martin.
They didn't really after Paul Martin because they were in disarray, and they expected they would win under Martin.
Yeah.
But, had Martin won, he would have groomed somebody to be a successor. Trudeau hasn't done that.
No, and that's revealed in what the Post has done here, the names that they put forward. I would say that probably half of these names that we're going to talk about, you could put them in a police lineup and the public couldn't figure out who's who. Like, they really have not shone. They have not, like when Mulroney left, he had all these rock stars behind him and Chrystia, people you knew, people you still think about. And Trudeau hasn't had that because his party has become, the Trudeau party, it's become a cult of personality. And he's not cultivated a successor or two or three. And so, the Liberal Party is scrambling, not just because of their terrible position in the polls, but because they don't know where to turn. They don't know what story to tell. And you can see that with Carney. It's like, okay, well, he looks good in a suit and he's from the outside and he runs something important in Britain. So maybe we get him. But I think he would be a disaster, as you and I have talked about before, because he's Michael Ignatieff with a pocket calculator. Like he is incapable of talking like a normal, regular person, which is part of the job. And, he's got the Ignatieff problem. As you know, during a very brief, blessedly short period, I advised Michael Ignatieff. And I remember saying to him, the Tories are coming after you with a $4 million ad campaign. And he's like, what is it going to say? And I said, they're going to say, you're just visiting Canada. He said, that's preposterous. Nobody cares about that. And I said to him, Mr. Ignatieff, you've lived outside of Canada for decades. How can you say you care about the country? How can you say you love the country when you've lived outside of the country for such a long time? And Carney has got a bit of the same problem. But compared to him, Ignatieff is practically a regular guy. Like Carney, I think he's one of those people, if he has a choice between a $30 word and a $3 word, he's always going to use the $30 word. Doesn't work.
I was at an event with a bunch of politicos, mostly liberals, a little while ago, and we were talking about that photo of Carney holding a beer awkwardly while wearing his Oilers jersey. And this old-time liberal said he's Chardonnay, not beer.
Yeah. And how did Harper win in 2004? I wrote for the National Post at the time. Finally, light went off my head. What are they doing? What is the Harper campaign? Harper was Tim Hortons. Liberals were Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, there's more people going to Tim Hortons. So it's the same thing here. Do you really want to repeat the mistake, Liberal Party, that you made with Michael Ignatieff? And it looks like some of them are prepared to do that.
You before we move on to the next name, I'll come back to this poll a few times throughout our discussion here. But you said you could put them in a police lineup, people wouldn't notice them, know who they were. Abacus Data in mid-July released a poll. And liberals were giddy, saying, ha, 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 only 66% can name Pierre Poilievre when they show a photo. A third of Canadians don't know who he is. Well, they also asked the potential liberal leadership contenders. Only 7% knew who Mark Carney was when they showed a photo. 93%, no clue. I mean, my joke has been they probably thought he was a character from Mad Men, or he was one of the two guys that played Darren in Bewitched. So that's where they're at. Okay, let's move along. Chrystia Freeland, a woman that more people knew in that poll, but only 39% could name her. 61% could not, even though she's been deputy PM and the finance minister for the last 4 years, since they axed the old finance minister, Bill Morneau, 4 years ago. What are your thoughts on her?
I actually feel sorry for her, because of the guy we were just talking about, because of Carney. Trudeau strung out this suggestion that he's talking to Carney to come into cabinet. And he wouldn't be coming into cabinet, become Minister of Veterans Affairs. He'd be coming in to be the Minister of Finance. That would be the deal. And, Trudeau, when asked, well, what happens to Freeland? And he what was the phrase he used? I have full confidence in her abilities, which is exactly what he said about Bill Morneau. So it probably made her blood run cold. So it'd be yet another, prominent liberal woman being thrown under the bus by Trudeau and his PMO. But, my big problem with her has always been twofold. Number one, she's too close to the blast radius, right? On SNC-Lavalin, she looked the other way. The Aga Khan, she looked the other way. She doesn't seem to have a moral center. That's number one. And number two, she talks to me like I'm an idiot. And maybe I am an idiot, but...
Well, in fairness, she talks to all of us like we're idiots.
Which is the point.
It sounds like a kindergarten teacher reading to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need to talk down to people.
No, and she does, and I'm sure she doesn't intend to. And perhaps she's a very nice person. I don't really know her, but she's been soiled, and I use that word deliberately, by her proximity to the Trudeau regime, and she just the fundamentals of it. The fundamentals of politicians, I always feel, really are important. That's why I like guys like Doug Ford and Jean Chrétien and Ralph Klein and René Lévesque. The people, they're kind of hell of a guy. she just does not say hell of a gal to me. She just seems like somebody who's, come down from the faculty club and she's going to tell me what to think. And that just doesn't work as a leader.
But she knows what all the best wines at Taroni's are on Price Street in Rosedale.
Yeah, she does.
That's
works
a very
there.
inside Toronto joke, but it's it is literally the restaurant that Andrew Coyne at the Globe and Mail writes his columns at, and all the smart and fancy people go to in Rosedale. It's a great restaurant, by the way, great pasta, but it is a little hoity-toity, and she comes across that way. So, I look at her from the perspective of her beliefs in what she's done, and I'm sitting right next to her book here, Plutocrats. She actually embraces economists like Thomas Piketty, who want 75 to 90% marginal tax rates. And I think, how is that a liberal? She's another example of the far left wing of the party trying to take over the NDP space. And in some ways, I guess they've been successful at that, but they're not willing to admit that they embrace full-on socialism, whereas the Liberal Party you worked for was actually centrist. Next candidate, who in my view is not centrist, and if she were to take over the Liberal Party, would only be able to do so by radically remaking it in her own image, and that's Melanie Joly, the current Foreign Affairs Minister. Warren, I was speaking to an old Liberal, more of your vintage, and Ontario-based Liberal said, there's no way that Melanie Joly can win. She doesn't have support of the people I'm talking to, and her views on Israel and Hamas would make her unpalatable. And when I told them what I'm about to tell you, was shocked and hadn't thought of that. I said, if Melanie Joly takes over, it is because she will appeal to the people who oppose Israel and tacitly support Hamas and remake the party in that fashion. That is how she will win. Your thoughts?
Melanie Joly, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And when she heard me say this, she blocked me on Twitter for a number of years. Maybe she's unblocked me. I don't know, and I don't care. She is the worst cabinet minister in the history of Confederation. You look at her milestones, the things she's achieved in her career. Early on, building a hockey rink on Parliament Hill at a cost of millions. The cost per skate would be in the thousands. And she built that hockey rink using taxpayers' money, mere feet from the biggest hockey rink in the world, which is the Rideau Canal. Okay?
Which did freeze that winter. It was not a great skating season the past year, but I was living in Ottawa at the time. I skated on the hockey rink. Not easy to get in. And, but it was a disaster. It was millions and millions over budget.
So that's early on in her career. Now look at it. We have this terrible, horrific tragedy from the weekend where 12 Arab Israeli children are killed by a deliberate attack by Hezbollah on Saturday evening. Children killed playing soccer, and she can't even bring herself to properly identify who did it. And that has been consistent of her behavior and her approach since October the 7th. If you have the impression that she doesn't like Israel and doesn't favor Israel, you'd be right. She doesn't. And as a consequence, it is further marginalized Canada in the world. Like, getting back to Freeland for a second, at least when she was there, because she was previously at Global Affairs,
I didn't mind her.
She renegotiated the free trade agreement with Donald Trump. That's pretty hard to do, right? She pulled that off. That is actually a success. Name me one thing that Melanie Joly has achieved in the time that she's been minister.
Well, she was summoned to China to be called out on the rug in Beijing and came out saying good things. That's about it.
She's terrible. She's terrible. And if the Liberal Party picks her to be their leader, because I know they've got this...
But you talk to Quebec Liberals, and there's two people that they recognize in the province of Quebec. Justin Trudeau, Melanie Joly, and she polls well. Now, the Liberals have to get over their fixation on Quebec, just like the Conservatives do. Quebec is important, but if you put all your attention into Quebec when you're not going to win the majority of seats, then you are, potentially losing seats in places like Ontario. Melanie Joly would not do well in Ontario, I don't think. She would not do well in Western Canada, including British Columbia, but she would do well in Quebec.
I don't think they're picking her, or those people you're speaking to are thinking about her because she's a Quebecer, because that's actually a deficit. Because Trudeau himself represents a Quebec riding. The Liberal Party has a long tradition that's worked for them on not picking two Quebecers in a row. The reason why they're thinking about her is, she's telegenic, she's an attractive person, but also because she's a female. The Liberal Party has had internally, since 1993, an internal thing about we need a female leader. Like hell, the Conservatives, the PCs actually had a female leader, albeit just for a summer job.
It was an internship.
It was, but the conservatives, all people did it first.
And they've had interim leaders who were women, like Ronna Ambrose.
That's right. I forgot about that. And so, it bugs liberals that they've been kind of out progressived. Not sure that's a word, but I'll use it. Then by the conservatives, like it drives them bananas. So they're thinking, quite a few of them right now, whoever it is, whether it's Freeland or Joly or Anand, we need to have a woman in there. I have some sympathy for that argument, but it can't be Joly because she's a terrible minister. She's terrible.
One thing that I've talked about with some conservatives, not people that are around Poilievre, but who have run campaigns, they've said that Joly, possibly Freeland, well, Joly especially, would be a nightmare if Trudeau left and they installed her as leader. Because the way they put it to me is, you can't punch Justin Trudeau hard enough right now. The public is fed up with him, and it doesn't matter how hard you hit the guy. People aren't going to say, that's unfair. They're going to say, hit him again. You can't punch a woman. Even in this day and age, we are all equal. We've got to show full respect. You can't treat a woman in politics the same way that you treat a man in politics, because in terms of doing battle with them, because the public will recoil. Many women will get upset and say that's sexist, and a lot of guys will be like, you're being mean to a woman. You can't do that. So some conservatives think she is their nightmare candidate. Carney's their dream. Joly would be their nightmare.
I don't believe that anymore. I used to believe it. I don't believe it.
No?
And the proof of it is 2016, Donald Trump following Hillary Clinton around a stage, looking like he was going to actually throttle her, not just punch her. I'm sorry, Brian, that is no longer the case because Donald Trump won that election. So I don't think that is true. I think Poilievre, it's unlikely.
Hillary was a well-known figure in politics. She was not well liked by a good portion of the public, loved by another portion, disliked by the other. I'm not sure you could say that about Joly.
Well, it doesn't matter. I don't think she's going to be the pick because at the end of the day, she does not stand up to scrutiny.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some more. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. Grab a beer, grab a coffee. More with Warren Kinsella when we come back. So Justin Trudeau still has not left, but we are speculating. Who will replace him, or who's the best bet? Who could beat Pierre Poilievre in a battle of the network stars? Dominic LeBlanc, the National Post article that prompted our conversation, Warren, they call him the fixer. I think that's an apt term. He's someone that you know. He's someone that I've covered. He apparently is looking to organize for whenever Trudeau does leave. I can't see that happening without the blessing of the boss. They're close friends. LeBlanc used to babysit Trudeau. While I think he is probably Trudeau's most politically astute minister and a guy who does go in and clean up stuff, I'm not sure that the public has a clue who he is. And in fact, that Abacus poll, just 4% could name him. What are your thoughts on Dom taking over?
Dom. Well, I know him very well. Full disclosure, his dad, Romeo LeBlanc, who was Governor General, was my daughter's godfather. And I was very glad. I employed Dominic's sister I know the LeBlancs really well. When I was Chrétien's special assistant, writing his speeches and getting him ready for question period and stuff like that, the guy in the very next office was Dominic LeBlanc. So I know Dominic LeBlanc better than a lot of people. I think he is the pick if they're smart. He is truly the fixer, as the Post had said. Like guys like Doug Ford think he's great. New Democrat.
So he has that hog factor you're talking about, the hell of a guy.
He's from New Brunswick. He's not from Quebec. He's not from the Golden Triangle. He went to Harvard. He's got the academic chops. But Dominic is the kind of guy you can see, and he'll make you laugh. He is super fun. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in politics.
So the way I've described him to people who don't know him at all is he makes you want to like him. Even if you go in saying, I hate the Trudeau government. I hate everyone in the Trudeau government. I don't want anything to do with the Trudeau government. You're going to meet LeBlanc, and as you say, he's going to make you laugh while you're talking about serious stuff, unimportant stuff. He's going to make you laugh. He's going to make you comfortable. That is a skill most politicians lack, but he's got it in spades. But is that enough for him to win the Liberal Party?
His big problem, because he is the fixer, as the Post has said, when Trudeau has a mistake or a mess, and he has plenty, the person who gets sent in is not Freeland. It's not Jolie. It's always Dominic, because Dominic has the political chops and the smarts to clean up the messes that Justin Trudeau leaves on aisle 3.
When Marco Mendicino made a mess at public safety, and Mendicino, I am sure, had leadership ambitions at one point. Now he's out of cabinet and worried about keeping what was a safe Toronto seat because of the sea change against Trudeau. But LeBlanc took that over. You don't hear about public safety anymore.
No.
He makes things go away.
And people like the guy. He is very likable. The problem is something that he can't control. He had cancer. He had a serious case of cancer. It is now, hopefully, reportedly in remission. But the concern a lot of people would have, and you saw how real this can become with Biden in the past few weeks, if they hire you for the job, they want to see that you've got the health, the ability to get to the other end of the job. And Dominic, what I'm hearing from people is, I love the guy. He's a friend. He's somebody I could support. Is his health okay? And
so he'd have to come out and make that clear.
He would, because that is a concern that a lot of Liberals would have is, Jack Layton, for the NDP, they won. They did better under Jack Layton than they ever had. And they had this almost Shakespearean tragedy where the poor guy got cancer and died. Liberals don't want that to happen to them.
I remember covering that at the time, and I knew Jack well, and I thought that I didn't see the decline, or maybe I'd been seeing him too often and seeing him go down. I thought people were being unfair to him and bringing up his health in the 2011 election. I said so on TV. I said so in print and radio, and turns out I was wrong. And his health was a concern, but his fixer was Tom Mulcair. Let's say it was LeBlanc. You and I both like him. Let's say he takes over. Justin Trudeau has tried to win elections by, running far to the left of the NDP. The Liberals used to win by taking a bit from the NDP, a bit from the Conservatives. They have kind of abandoned center field. How would Dom be different, or would he be different than Trudeau?
Dominic LeBlanc is a Boston Democrat. He will do whatever it takes to win. That it has been the tradition in the Liberal Party. It's why the Liberal Party isn't presently, the most successful political machine in Western democracy. You do what it takes to win. So Dominic comes from that tradition.
So the Trudeau guys have doubled down on policies that are highly unpopular. They've doubled down on things they know the public is upset about, believing, no, we just have to explain it better. Or, like cod liver oil, it's good for you. He would just, say, all right, forget it. We're changing the immigration system back to the way it was, or we're cutting down on international students, or what have you.
I think everybody's looking at all of these candidates you and I are talking about and assuming they are going to take the Liberal Party back to the center. And I don't think they should make that assumption for two reasons. Number one,
I don't think some of them
doing
will.
a deal with Jagmeet Singh to turn a minority into majority, that was a smart thing to do. That was a political achievement. They turned a minority into majority, number one. Number two, if Pierre Poilievre does not get a majority, I believe he will, but let's say he doesn't, he's in big trouble, because I believe that these guys, whoever wins, is going to do what Dion attempted to do, which is craft a deal with the NDP and the Bloc Québécois to push Poilievre out. Poilievre has to get a majority, or I believe he's going to be back on the opposition benches.
Next candidate. They what does the Post call him? He's the guy I call Frankie Bubbles.
It's a better name.
They call him the deal maker. He is business liberal. Another little guy from Shawinigan, not the Petite Gare, but another one. He Francois Philippe Champagne, in case people don't know who I'm talking about with Frankie Bubbles. Frankie Bubbles has been the Energizer Bunny. Him and Vic Fideli from Ontario have been going around the world bringing in these EV manufacturing plants, which some people like, pisses off others. But they're also bringing in other manufacturers. They're bringing in other businesses, and they are deal makers. I like the guy. I think he's got a great positive personality. I've dealt with him in several different ministries over the years. Would they go for a Quebecer, specifically a Quebecer dude? You were saying there's a lot of people want a woman in there. Would he even have a shot?
I don't think so. And it's too bad, because he is an impressive guy. And let me say, just as Alan Fotheringham invented Brian Mulroney, Brian Lilley invented Frankie Bubbles. You were the earliest. Actually, it was you who drew my attention to the guy and how impressive he was, even before Chrystia did, because Chrystia, who I talk to somewhat regularly, he also says, you got to check this guy out. But the problem is twofold. As you just identified, he's another Quebecer. They are not going to pick another Quebecer. Not going to do that.
Now, the funny thing is, a lot of Canadians believe that Justin Trudeau is a Francophone Quebecer. Have you ever heard the complaints from Francophone Quebecers that he's an Anglo from Ontario?
They're separatists. They complain about everything. I don't care about them. But the second reason why you can't pick him is he does actually have a mistake on his resume. This is the guy who promised to bring grocery prices down. He promised to bring the big grocery chains like Loblaws to heel. He didn't do it. He also equally promised that he would get Canadians more sane prices on cell phone service and wireless service and the internet. He didn't do that either. So I think he is vulnerable on those two fronts. As the Minister of Industry, he has responsibility for bringing these big companies down to earth and getting them to treat consumers properly. And in fairness to him, that was always a hard assignment, but he hasn't done it.
And that's an issue that cuts party lines. It's not just liberals or New Democrats who think, well, the government needs to do something about the price of cell phones. Everybody is annoyed at the price of cell phones. Anita Anand is on everyone's list, and I'm not sure why. The National Post calls her the keener, and maybe I think that's an accurate description. Most people have no idea who she is. She actually does better than Mark Carney and Dominic LeBlanc. 19% of people could name her when they saw her. But Bill Morneau recruited her to politics, I believe, from academia. She seems smart. She seems earnest. And you will forget her 5 minutes after she leaves the room.
Anita who?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anita who. But the big problem is this. Champagne's going to get reelected, even if the Liberals, get in big trouble. Freeland's going to get reelected. Dominic's going to get reelected. She's not going to get reelected. She's in Oakville.
Oakville, Ontario.
Oakville is one of the swingiest swing seats. It goes the way the government goes. If you're going to have a massive conservative majority, she is going to be a footnote of history. She's not going to be a leadership contender when she can't even keep her own seat.
You heard it here first, folks. From Warren Kinsella, Oakville is full of swingers. I didn't realize that. Oh, vote swingers. Vote swingers. Yeah, she is not going to win. Freeland, yeah, most likely. The Conservatives got into Toronto St. Paul's. I can't see them winning Toronto. What's her? Rosedale?
Yep.
Yeah. It's the writing above me. I'm in Toronto Centre. The only way that's potentially changing is if it goes NDP, which possibility. That could happen. So Anita Anand, she's kind of out. As we scroll down through the list, Sean Fraser, they call the millennial. He is the guy who broke the immigration system. That's what I can't get past. He's now the Minister of Housing. And part of the reason that we have a housing crisis, or that it is as acute as it is because he broke the immigration system. He's the guy that started letting in, what did we have last year? 900,000 or 1 million temporary foreign students coming in. You can't get housing near any of the campuses that these people are living in. Drove up the immigration, annual immigration numbers for permanent residents to 500,000 from roughly 250 to 300,000. So buying a home in Toronto, they're talking about maybe we'll bring in an annual tax on your home if it's worth more than $1 million. Well, that's every home in the greater Toronto area, every single family home. This guy, I can't see how he could possibly be a leader. Maybe if the Liberals were out of power for a while, he could come in down the road and do it. But to me, I just see the guy that broke the immigration system, the one that used to have lots of public support, and according to polling and focus groups from the Privy Council office, no longer does.
So there you go again. You're concerned about policy, and I never care about policy. And on the housing thing, there isn't a politician in the country that anybody would give any credit to, because they're mad at all the politicians on housing because it's such a mess. So I think he'll escape that one. On TV,
hold on. You don't believe in policy? You just brought up the grocery prices.
Hard to believe. No, I don't think they put the blame for that one at his feet alone. What I'm saying is they put the blame at the feet of every politician in Canada, from municipal on up. He looks good on TV. He's articulate. He's from Atlantic Canada. He hasn't been close to the blast radius on a lot of the scandals. But he's 40 years old. I got shoes that are older, right? So I think it is worthwhile for him to run. It's worthwhile for him to run, to get his name up and so on. But it would be a run for next time, not for this time.
I do like that the article the Post put out did quote the Full Comment podcast from a few weeks ago when I had Andrew Perez on. And he described Sean Fraser as the future of the federal Liberal Party, a potential future party leader. He's a millennial. He's smart. He's a good communicator. He's attractive.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? He's not going to win.
Justin Trudeau won the leadership when he was in his 40s, but he's a different beast.
Yeah, he had that surname thing. That was kind of helpful.
And the boxing match.
Yeah.
Which... you got to remember, I was the ringside announcer for it.
You were.
You can find it on YouTube, folks. If you've never heard me call a boxing match and you want to know what that's like.
And I said to
it's
Gerald
on the
Butts
YouTube
before that thing, I think I told you too, are you guys crazy? What if he gets knocked out? If he gets knocked out, it's all over. And Butts was like, yeah, we know. We're just going to do it. And it's like, it transformed Justin Trudeau, made him a household name even more than he was.
Oh, just a quick aside. For people who haven't heard how that boxing match came together, I was in the makeup chair at Sun News Network, and the woman that does Trudeau's hair used to cut my hair, used to cut Harper's hair, Jim Flaherty, Stefania Capavia. She also cut Senator Brazeau's hair. She is basically, she had a salon that looked after a lot of people that worked on the Hill. And Brazeau was going into a charity boxing match, and this boxing match had been going on for a while. And it wasn't a big deal. He said he needed somebody to fight. And Stefania said, I know a guy. And it was Trudeau. She tells me that she arranged this.
I did not know that.
She tells me that she had set this up. I got out of the makeup chair, made a beeline to Corey Tenike's office, and said, Trudeau's going to box Brazeau. And he said, we'll broadcast it like it's the fucking moon landing. And we made it into a big deal.
It was a big deal.
And, so I'm to blame for Justin Trudeau becoming prime minister. Mark Miller is on the list. He is current immigration minister, former minister of Indigenous Affairs, went to McGill, as part of that McGill mafia that surrounds Trudeau, was in Trudeau's wedding party. They call him the anti-Poilievre. Maybe, but I have trouble seeing Mark Miller as a serious leadership contender. He's the type of guy that you could say, all right, smart guy, put him in charge of a ministry, do a good job. The jury's out on whether he's done a good job or not. But to me, he's a supporting player. He's up for best supporting actor in a movie one day. He is not lead actor.
No, when Trudeau goes, he's going to go. He's there because of Trudeau. They're very close friends. He was in Trudeau's wedding party. He's a smart guy.
The way it was described to me is he was one of the guys counting $20 bills in the back of the room when Trudeau first started running the leadership. That's how close they are.
He's a smart guy, but it just, they've tried to turn him into an attack dog lately, and he's not pulling it off. He's not effective at it. So, and honestly, I was actually surprised to see him name on this list. I have never heard anybody talk about Miller being a leadership candidate until I read this thing in the National Post.
Yeah, neither have I, and it may surprise people, but you do know, I talk to liberals. What surprises me is they talk back. They actually will take my calls or meet me or respond to text messages. Jean Charest's on this list, and there's probably a lot of people who supported Pierre Poilievre in the conservative leadership race saying, yeah, well, he was a liberal the whole time. I would disagree. He was and still is a conservative, and I don't see him, jumping ship. And he's probably done with politics. I mean, that was my take when the last time I spoke to him.
Yeah, this one, I interpreted it as the Post having a bit of fun.
A bit of mischief?
He is a conservative. You've interviewed him. I've interviewed him. I've known him. You've known him. He's a conservative. He's not a Pierre Poilievre style of conservative. The leadership race made that clear. But he is a conservative.
His policy, if people took a look at it, was much more conservative than people would have thought. He did not get a look from people who were supporting Poilievre or the other candidates because they just said, old red Tory, really a liberal, a tourist in the party, to coin or steal a phrase, not coining it. But the last name on the list is one that I actually think is interesting, and that's Chrystia Clark, the former BC premier. She's from the old BC Liberal Party. BC Liberals used to be where the federal Liberals and federal Conservatives came together at the provincial level to take on the NDP hordes and stop them from conquering everything. I don't know if you've seen this, but there have been a bunch of federal Liberals now running for the BC NDP. So, the BC Liberals out there aren't the same. I think she'd be an interesting pick because she is a centrist, as the Post calls her. She's not near the blast radius, which is your big concern. She is someone who knows how politics works, but isn't an insider. Those things are all good points in my view. Do you think she has the interest, the ability to take over the party, the support within the party, or are they more like the guys running to join the provincial NDP of David Eby?
I think she's a contender, and for a couple of reasons. Firstly, she was one of the few people who have the guts to actually say Trudeau should go and put her name to it, and that needed to happen. But secondly, I helped run Gord Campbell's campaign for the BC Liberals, and I was a federal Liberal in 1996, and that was the election that Chrystia won first. And she is, a lot like people like me. She's fiscally conservative and socially progressive. And that really is the majority of Canadian voters. So I think that she is a contender. The question is, can she come from that loss she had against John Horgan in BC? Because she lost, right? She didn't win. She lost badly.
Well, I remember, was it 2013, being in the Sheraton Ballroom on Burrard Street in Vancouver. Hopefully I got the location right.
I think
you're
so.
the guy who lived in Vancouver. You were there because you were advising the BC Liberals. And it was...
Oh, no, that was Hotel Vancouver.
That was Hotel Vancouver?
Yep.
Okay. But there were... Maybe the Sheraton was where I was staying, but you were there. There were federal conservatives there, like Dimitri Pantsatopoulos. There was Warren Kinsella and other federal liberals. And Clark had an amazing comeback. She was supposed to lose that 2013 election. And we went in saying, okay, she's lost. And she ended up winning. It was an incredible comeback. So she does have skills.
Mm-hmm. She does, and I think she's what the Liberal Party needs. The perfect candidate is a fusion of Dominic LeBlanc's chops and skills and smarts, and somebody like Christy Clark, because I think having a strong female smart candidate like her would change the outcome for the Liberal Party. But the outcome, whoever they pick, any of these people, they're still looking at losing, because the bottom line is Liberal Party of Canada has been behind Pierre Poilievre by 15 to 20 points for more than a year. It's a tattoo. Like it's not a passing fling. This is real. They are going to lose. So they've got to be thinking about picking somebody who can rebuild the party. Because the party, like Brian, the party doesn't exist. The Liberal Party does not exist in many parts of the country. Unlike the Conservatives, even unlike the NDP, the Liberal Party has no presence.
We got to wrap soon, but I want you to explain why that matters, because a lot of people just think, well, you get a good leader and the leader's popular. But you need that ground game. You need that organization.
Yeah, and the reason why it matters is 1,500. The majority of the Liberal wins in the caucus presently are people who came within 1,500 votes of either the Tory or the New Democrat. So having an organization on the ground to get out the vote when the margins are that tight really, really, really matters. And the Liberal Party just doesn't exist in a lot of parts of the country.
And they've turned it into a movement based around one guy.
And movements are top down, parties are bottom up.
Yeah. I've been saying for a long time that the similarities between Trump and Trudeau are remarkable.
Yep.
And one of them is they both run movements that are centered around
Them.
one guy.
Yep.
Well, we'll see what happens over the next little while. Warren is still firmly in the camp that Justin Trudeau is leaving. I am still firmly in the camp that he is staying. And so we'll see what happens. And this list of contenders will still be contenders, regardless of when Trudeau leaves, because if he doesn't leave on his own, the voters will send him packing. Warren, thanks for the time today.
Thank you, my friend.
Full Comment is a Post Media podcast. My name's Brian Lilley, your host. This episode was produced by Andre Proulx with theme music by Bryce Hall. Kevin Libin is the executive producer. You can subscribe to Full Comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Now a place to get your podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, please subscribe. Make sure that you give us a rating, leave a review, tell your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Brian Lilley.